like
one
that.
more quick point about the bell curve that I wanted to read. It's kind of the last of my like highlighted quotes because this is really salient. It's talking about the book, and it says this book presented strong evidence that genes play a role in intelligence, but linked it to the unsupported claim that genes explain the small but consistent black-white difference in IQ, saying that this book did kind of make some claims. Like I said, even though it said it was unresolved, it did make some claims that the differences on IQ were due to genetic intelligence. The juxtaposition of good argument with a bad one seemed politically motivated, and persuasive refutations soon appeared. Actually, African Americans have excelled in virtually every enriched environment they have been placed in, most of which they were previously barred from. And this in only the first decade or two of improved, but still not equal opportunity. I thought that was a really salient point.
Yeah.
Saying that, well, obviously, if this is not true and that that the genetic makeup doesn't determine your intelligence, then give them some fucking time. We just started letting these people into unsegregated schools.
Yeah.
We just started letting them into our political machinations. Like let them let them get in and advance without barriers. And then if you still believe this, maybe there is some
give them the same opportunities, and then you can, because that would be a controlled test of
give
how
them the same nurture, and then you can blame it on
exactly,
nature.
And then you can blame it on nature.
Very
exactly.
well. Very
and I think that that's something that, like, Walter Williams talks about, how in the 100 years after slavery, before the like modern welfare state and the war on poverty and stuff like that, that black people made some of the greatest gains over the highest hurdles of any people all at any time anywhere in the world. And it just goes to show the kind of, when you empower people, the kind of results that they can produce from that are astounding. Even people who have been disempowered for almost all of that, like for multiple generations, as soon as you give them even just a tiny little bit of empowerment, they take that shit and they run with it, and they do great stuff with it. And I think that that's exactly what that last quote that you read is illustrating, in the sense that, like, if you present people with different opportunities than they've been presented with in the past, you will see different results come about.
It's what's sad in our society too is, I hate to be harping on TED Talk a lot, but I watch so many TED Talks on my road trip.
They're great.
To LA.
They're very good.
Yeah, you know, I do. I spend about 4.5 hours just straight down there listening to them. But listen to one on the way back where this lady's talking about how COVID-19 has changed our education system and stuff, right? And how that's like, it was a great speech. She gave a great speech. It was just so well said and all that stuff. But one of the points she brought up in it is how shitty we still have the system where the level of funding that a school district will receive is based on test scores, right? And then, as we're seeing, right, like if you have a society or a group that has been not afforded the greatest opportunities, right, so that they have already their predisposition, not because of nature, but because of nurture, right?
And
like,
the skewed testing.
Exactly, all that, right? So then they get less funding in their schools too. So now you get people who need the more help, who need the more leg up, and they're receiving less funding for the schooling. So you're getting worse schools, and then that's still, in a sense, is not helping them to.
It's the old analogy of testing a fish on how well it can climb a tree.
Exactly.
In the same way that we were talking about, like, oh well, these Aboriginals in Africa or whatever, they aren't as intelligent as us because their houses are different than ours. It's like they are so much more intelligent with the resources that they have than you could even imagine, because you are so dumb with their resources. So you can't even see how smart they are 100%. Because you don't know anything about them and how it works over here. And I think that one of the biggest issues for me when people bring up these kinds of ideas is that they come into them like the guy at the end of that TED Talk said, with these preconceived ideas. Like he had a visceral human need to want to connect with somebody, and as soon as he saw even the slightest resemblance of himself in that in that somebody, he attributed all of his better qualities in his mind to those people. And we do that the same now. Like when you look at these tests and how they work and stuff like that, you obviously like tests that say that you're intelligent and you want to use that to test everybody else's intelligence. people's intelligence differ based on the kinds of things that they have to do.
Exactly. And that's exactly another point she was saying too, is like, stop using these tests to compare our kids against each other, and
exactly
to say like you are not as intelligent or more than because you scored this much on a tax test that was completely fabricated by somebody who's gonna, like you said, test you based on markers that they deem
as intelligent. Exactly. The people who make the test have an idea of what intelligence is, and so they make the test with that in mind, even though that might not be how other people are intelligent.
I have a question for you. Do you think that you were at Fort Hood the best soldier on that post?
Fuck no.
You won Fort Hood Soldier of the Year.
I know, it's incredible.
Because the testing process.
It's a great example.
Yeah, it is. I thought so.
So good.
Because like
completely rigged.
Yeah, not even just rigged, but like skewed in a certain way.
Oh, 100%.
So like if you are physically superior, right, and then you could also answer some of these questions well, you're going to do better than somebody who could answer every question correctly but can't do 25 push-ups in a row.
Well, and then you're bringing up an amazing point, because even in that test too, it was even skewed more towards bias. Like, I passed, or I won the competition knowing no answers to any of the questions. But because I was able to display my lack of knowledge confidently, they picked me, right? And it was like, that's a pick thing, like where we like you better than this other guy.
Judging.
Yeah, that's judging. Right? And
it's subjective.
Oh,
correct.
100%.
Yeah, like just a subjective judgment call.
Yeah.
And that's like some of these tests. Yeah, some of these tests are, like they said, Thomas Sowell said in that quote that I read, he was talking about this group of people who did not do well on this part of the intelligent tests, but then later on did much better in these other intelligent tests. And it looked like they had gained intelligence, when in reality, it was just test taking faults. Like it's just faults in your test taking. And with the school system, you bring up a great point, because that negativity feedback loop of, okay, well, these people don't do well on these type of tests, right? But you can give them this other one, they would do better. But they obviously don't do good on these ones. So let's keep giving those tests to those people so that they don't get the funding, so that the people who do good on the test can get the funding. Now, I'm putting motivations where I don't know there are motivations, but if you were a white supremacist,
you could see how that
or a
could skew
segregationist, then you can see how someone who believed in that would want the money going to their kid's school.
Right.
Man, think about this. When you brought up education, it reminded me, last night I was talking to one of my coworkers, and she was just kind of telling me about how she was having a lot of issues over the last year, especially around school, because she doesn't learn, like she learns in a group environment much better than online or something like that. And so when you brought up the idea of how that TED Talk that you mentioned about how we're now changing broad aspects of the educational system in a way that will favor certain students over other students. 100%. You know, it's like all of a sudden students who are more on like that kind of like self-education bit where they think, oh, well, I do better learning about learning on my own, you know, like give me a book to read and I'll read it and then I'll ace the test. Whereas other kids are like, you know, I need to have more like discussions with people to kind of explain some of these concepts in the book that I don't quite understand, or you know, something like that. And you can see how these just in the ways that you present the information to children can change how well they will test on the exact same information.
Yeah, it's the teaching bias.